Oh
Got
yeah,
it.
we're gonna record this. That's gonna be a thing.
Is it totally a thing?
It is totally a thing. And there we go. My waiting room area went away. I had to run and find it. Cool. Today, we have assembled here to discuss all of the world's problems and how to solve them.
As I said, today we're talking about me.
And I think you're still spotlit for some reason.
Well, look at me.
Ah, fair enough. You are the
Don't look
host,
at me.
but it should be the speaker. I'll put it this way. Sean, when I speak, do you see me as big center screen kind of person?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Then I guess
but
it's
only
just...
because I haven't been able to change it yet.
Ouch. Harsh.
Here, now I've got it in gallery view, so I can see everybody.
Yeah, I guess I'll do that too.
Hey, look, guys, y'all haven't seen this in a long time.
Oh, fancy. So we are, what are we doing?
All right. So who wants to start?
It's that, no, this is a webinar. We're going to talk about stuff.
Okay.
And do you remember what we're going to talk about? We can talk
Not
about
even a little bit.
Yeah, color me surprised. Well, this month we were talking about security again. This time we're going with SQL Server security on the ground, or practical security. Every one of these live events, by the way, has like a dozen different names.
And I'm one of those, right?
You're absolutely one of those. So, hey, for people who are new to our little world, why don't you say who you are and I'll say who I am.
Hey, everybody, I'm Sean.
I'm Jen. This is not DBAs at Midnight. This is Learn SQL Server live in person. Not really in person.
Or else.
We have both been SQL Server DBAs for about a bajillion years, measuring with the English system.
Totally plays.
It does. And I actually am going to ask the chat, if you wouldn't mind, is Sean pinned on screen or is it me too? Because now I'm frustrated because I want the speaker view. Greg or Paul or Jennifer, what do you see?
I see Jen and Sean both, but whoever speaks comes like focus on my screen.
Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you for saying that. Excellent. Then we can absolutely get started. So yeah, Sean, tell me something.
Yes.
You wrote a little bitty paper and I put it out.
Okay. I kind of remember that.
Yeah. And the first thing that you said was that schemas are a big deal for security, which I've got to say, I've just got a lot of doubt about that because schemas, that's just DBO, right?
Well, you know, they're under the security tree for a reason, right? Because they had the security, you know, so many people treat the security tree like it's miscellaneous. That's just where they put stuff they had no other place to put it, right? Sure. But yeah, so back in the day when we effectively, I say effectively because you could jerry rig it, but it really wasn't very good. When we effectively only had DBO, people got used to only using DBO. And I don't know how many of you guys remember way back in the 2006, 5 and 6.0 days. But man, managing security then was just, oh God, it was horrendous, right? You had to basically keep a list of the permissions people had so you could put them back if you needed to. But every time, you know, if you didn't want to give somebody just blanket, you know, execute on the database, right, or read on the database, then you had no way to subdivide. So you had to give somebody access to, or I'll say somebody, right? Back then, well, even now, you know, you got lots of, everything isn't done in groups, right? So you had lots of users, right? So you had to give 40 users access to this new SP that was just created. And then there's another SP created next week and you have to give them access to that. and then next week, and then next week, and then 2 weeks from now, and so on and so on, right? So you had to keep building on top of this. It was very um,
Fun?
active. It was,
Easy?
it was very interactive, right? So today, even people still put almost everything in DBO. I'm not completely shitting on DBO, but really, you should put as little in DBO as you can, even from a backup and restore perspective, right? But put as little in DBO as you can, and segment your database into logical chunks, even if it's by, and this goes way beyond security for me, right? But even if it's by function, I simply love having history tables and customer tables and HR tables and management tables and shipping tables and so on, right? And it greatly simplifies your naming conventions because you can rely on the schema names to do some of that heavy lifting, right? So I can have I can have history tables that, and instead of having to say customers history something or other, right? I can just have customer management.customer and history.customer, right?
Yeah.
So it's the exact same table, it's just in a different schema, right?
Yeah, and we
So,
clearly make heavy use of that in all of our stuff in many
Yeah,
backup
exactly.
and so forth.
And so you
It
can
helps a
simplify
lot.
that stuff. But really, the thing that we get from that mostly is we get a tremendous ability to give people access to entire schemas. So we can say, I want this group of guys to have access to the HR schema. And that way, security management is a little less interactive as it used to be, right? Because now any new objects that are created, they automatically have access to, as long as they're in the HR schema,
Yeah.
right? And I realize we have that already with execute permissions at the DBO level, but that's part of the problem we have. That's part of the problem we have with everybody getting databases broken into and whatnot these days, right? Is everybody is oversimplifying their security and just giving everybody, run of the whole database.
I think I've said it before, the simplest solution is not always the best solution because,
Yeah, security is a huge pain in the ass. Good security is even worse, but that's the price you pay for people not breaking in. I mean, and at times security is costly, but no security is even more costly.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
And
I've always had a good hold for those that are not as used to using schemas. I've always really liked them in terms of like, this is a folder, basically. You can't do nested schemas, unfortunately, but a folder, which is great because it groups everything together, of course. And again, that security, you can do individual items permissions, of course, and you can do security on the whole folder, which, yeah, okay, yeah, I could absolutely see. Like I didn't before, that's part of practical security.
So yeah, I'm a huge fan of schemas, not only for segmenting databases by usage, but also by permissions, because somebody may need execute to the HR schema, but they sure as hell don't need something like view definition.
No.
Right. Or even better, the website user doesn't need view definition.
Right.
But the developers may, or the support guys may. So, you can segment things a lot better, and you can have different permissions to different objects at the schema level, right? Without having to compromise anything. So it's a fabulous way to segment things. I simply love it.
Absolutely.
I think I've said enough about schemas.
No, yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, we also talked about, and I summarized this somewhere, I'm looking, DB owner is only for DBAs, I believe is how I put that. So you said you're a firm believer in explicit permissions, but DB owner is very much the height of implicit permissions. So, golly, Sean, why shouldn't we give a trusted user a DB owner on a database if they need it to, if they need a bunch of different permissions?
Well, that reason is more selfish than anything.
Oh yeah.
Even if they need, and I've had this so many times, even if they need all of the permissions that DB owner gives you, still give them those explicit permissions, because there's this nice little thing called restricted mode in databases, and it allows you to kick out everybody except what? DB owners. So if there's a time when a DBA needs to do something and keep everybody out, like the application or something, right? Then a lot of times shutting down an application is a lot harder with all of the different bots and everything that they have and all the different middlewares and everything, right? Especially if your application doesn't have DB owner, you can kick everybody out and you can get done what you need to get done. It's just a lot easier way to make sure that people that don't need to be in while you're trying to fix something can't get in.
I'm curious if you have, this is something I haven't asked you before, if you have an origin story, if there's a story behind this where this or something very similar came into play.
Yeah, I mean, it's the simple, maybe trying to fix some corruption.
Okay.
And you need to make sure that everybody's out of the database.
Yeah, corruption is a nice, clear example. Absolutely.
Something as simple as that, right? Maybe only you and the other DBAs can get in and look around, and I can control the DBAs and stay out of the database. But I can't control all of the services and all of the devs and all the QA people who may not have checked their email and they don't know that there's an issue going on, right?
Right.
But if I can set it in restricted mode and be assured that nobody is in there but me and my team, golden.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even if somebody's going to get all the permissions that a DB owner would, don't put them in DB owner unless they're on your team.
And honestly, when does that happen? Like, when does even a power user need more than, I think the example you gave is create table, create procedure. Okay, great. You have create table and create procedure. You don't have alter table or drop table.
Or be able to like create and manage queues and certificates and all of these other varied permissions that are really deep level. You don't need, most DBAs don't even know what they do, right?
Yeah.
So if you ever need them, it's easy enough to say, okay, I'll open that up for you. But a lot of times people they go, and again, remember, security is a pain in the ass. So a lot of people just go the easy route and say, okay, I'll just give you that permission and go on about it. No, that's a DBA task.
Yeah.
A developer has no business being in there creating certificates or anything, right? That's a DBA task, and it should be managed as such and kept more, I say in-house, but closer to the vest, right? When I say in-house, I mean in group.
I mean my literal house where it's just me and my wife that are the DBAs, and that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also talked a bit about dynamic SQL. Okay, I'd be interested. I'm actually going to, let me know if you can't unmute yourself, but sound off either speaking or in chat if you like. Who is just completely anti-dynamic SQL? Who is pro? Who is, yes, but? I want to hear some opinions here. I'd like some discussion.
Yeah, I'd be fine with unmuting.
Yeah, of course. Everybody's taking this opportunity to learn and nap.
Yeah, especially Bridget. We lost her so long ago.
Well, that's absolutely fair. We're very, very boring. Oh, hi, Bridget.
Hi.
Just messing with you.
Picking on me because my name's first, aren't you?
Yes.
It's right beside mine. Yeah.
I'm a no but kind of person on dynamic SQL.
Okay.
I've seen an overuse of dynamic SQL. I used to work with somebody who would do everything in dynamic SQL and then want to know why everything was running so slow.
Golly, Fred, I don't know. His name was actually Fred. I want some kind of prize.
Just that it's dynamic SQL doesn't make it run slow necessarily.
Correct.
It's not great though. That's like saying just because an ORM generated doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It's like, well, yeah, but the odds are. Yeah, I'm with you, Bridget. Greg, you're unmuted. Did you want to say something as well? Greg's
He's just upset that he didn't get called on first.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should ask people to raise their hands.
So while we're waiting on somebody else to chime in, yeah, my biggest problem with dynamic SQL is, of course, injection. Yeah, that's a part of it, but it's also, how do I put this? It's a secondary injection attack, right? Yes, you can say, you know, you need to cut out certain characters, you need to do it a certain way to keep people from injecting into your code, right? But what I mean by secondary attack is a lot of times dynamic SQL is used to gather information about a database so that they can then go perform their primary attack.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like capturing errors is a really good one, right? And this goes, and this too goes true for regular SQL as well, right? Do I talk about capturing errors later on, or?
That's a really good question. So we talked briefly, because I added some to this section too, about not using the parameters directly in
Right.
SQL to parameterize your dynamic SQL.
Right. Well, yeah. So remind me to talk about capturing errors.
All right.
In a minute. But yeah, so performance, sure. I mean, DSQL can be, those queries can be cached, the plans can be cached. So the performance isn't as big a deal.
It really depends. I'm going to fight you on that one, but go ahead.
But it really depends on, you know, what you're using it for. And like you just said, how you're getting those parameters in there, right? So there's a lot of things that you can keep out, and a lot of things you can keep from coming back as well, right? So in other words, if you take that result set and save it in a temporary location like a temp table or a var or something, and then mine that var, mine that table for things that might be suspect, to make sure that you're not returning any information that you didn't want to, in case somebody got past your primary defense of all of the injection markers, right? And those injection markers are damn clever. You won't get them all, right? There's this very, very clever one that they have with pushing in hash with converting their queries to hex.
Yeah,
and then sending it as hex. And it's like, okay, great, it's hex, right? Big deal. It's not going to flag most things. But then on the other side, they dehex it.
And it's code.
And yeah, and it's code. And it's a brilliant little simple way to do it.
That's actually how the plugin hack in our websites this last month happened.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So about 20 years ago, I had a website hacked like that. And I looked at it and I just went, damn, that's good.
Yeah, it's clever.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not even the most clever one that they do, right? So I don't have any examples right now. Don't ask me.
No, it's quite all right. But really quick. So yeah, we talked about not using parameters directly. So parameterizing, checking, so forth. You did say, you said, in fact, create another stored procedure that does all of the checking of the parameters so that any change you make becomes global. So I've got this one stored procedure that checks all of my dynamic SQL inputs. That is also very clever. I like that.
Right.
And logging the details for visual inspection as well.
Yeah, yeah. So not only your inputs, so there's a couple different ways you could do this. You could, of course, log all of your, or scrub all of your inputs, right? So if you've got a variable that comes in, scrub that variable, right? But once the T-SQL is built completely, scrub that as well in case you missed something. Because if you've got if you've got somebody that's putting something in like hex and they're going to decode it and then it's going to be uncoded when it runs, by the time you get it here, it's decoded. However they were going to do it, it's decoded, right? So, and it's going to slow it down. Bridget, this is where the T-SQL is being slower thing can come in, right? So scrub each of the vars and then scrub the final T-SQL. And, you know, so all of that scrubbing can take a little extra time, but damn, dude, it is so worth it.
I think I know, though, the exact situation that Bridget's talking about. You're thinking about reasonably, moderately well-written dynamic SQL, where it's just, you know, oh, where X equals and then attach whatever they passed in for X. No, 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 no. I think Bridget and I are both talking about times where people are actually like writing the code entirely based on what people pass in. So if people pass in this, then I'm going to put in this chunk of joins and so forth and so on.
Yeah, I've seen that,
will
yeah.
absolutely jack things up. But I'm belaboring that. Yes, it will. So there. Back me up, Bridget.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is that actually the situation you were into? Or
That is
everything-
exactly what happened. Yeah, you nailed it.
I know things. I'm telling you, I've been doing this stuff a bazillion years. I have seen half of everything. Sean's seen the other half. And Bridget has seen like a Venn diagram of that. Okay,
I'm just
Sean,
saying that just because it's D-SQL doesn't necessarily mean it's going to run slow, even in that situation. Maybe if it's being called 100 times a minute, 1,000 times a minute, but just that on its own, it'd be negligible.
no,
Anyway,
because it can't create a plan for it. And no, but we'll talk later because I think you're forgetting stuff. But anyway,
Hey,
we're on security. Yes, Curtis.
yeah, I kind of agree with both of you. The Sean's approach, as I see it, is using dynamic SQL in a controlled environment. And yet I agree with you and also Bridget, of course, because I work with her. So I'm not going to argue with her.
Yes.
So
Oh, it's two against two. Let's go.
well,
Doubles.
no, but I actually see it in both aspects.
Yeah.
You know, I can see it with a troubleshooting aspect, but I can also see where it can go completely awry if you're just allowing whatever to be tossed into a query.
Yeah. And
Sure.
don't get me wrong, I absolutely see Sean's point of view. It absolutely can be done well. I'm just really
I'm not even talking about that. Okay, so take a query. Is there a query that gets run without a plan?
No.
You just said that SQL can't build a plan for it.
SQL can't
It's slow
cache and
because
reuse
SQL
plans.
It can cache and reuse plans if they're dynamic SQL, because by the time it gets to SQL, by the time it gets to the QP, it's not dynamic anymore. It is a fully built query that has been sent to the QP.
How about if we fight about this after the recording?
Sure.
Sweet. Y'all can hang around too. It's going to be fun. Did you actually have anything else to say about dynamic SQL that wasn't us fighting about performance?
I don't think so right this second.
Yeah, I think you covered it. I titled the next section "Deny, Deny, Deny," and the teaser.
Denied.
Yeah, the teaser I put out somewhere was along the lines of how being an absolute jerk is part of your job as a DBA, and that's a bit extreme, but you know, I'm trying to be clickbaity a little bit.
Damn, that's a shame because I was always taking that literally for so many years.
Yeah, I know. So two different ways to handle security around an application launch. So what do you think about start by giving away all the permissions, and then, you know, if there are problems, then you can narrow back down the permissions. That's the way to go, right?
Well, the only problems you run into with something like that is, you know, security problems. I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh, this is a security session.
oh, okay. No, I'm just saying though that like there are two types of security problems, right? One of them is I don't have enough security and I need to be able, I don't have enough permissions and I need to be able to do this, right? The other one is, oh shit, we had too many permissions and allowed somebody to do this. So which
Yeah.
one of these two guys do you want to be?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm going to say outright that the starting with minimal permissions and denying explicitly is probably the better scenario since we're speaking of security, for security. Now, here's the question, and we've talked about this elsewhere. Talk about real world boots on the ground. How does that tend to go? in
Poorly.
an yeah, in an environment where you're the DBA, you personally, Sean, and you're like, okay, we've got this new thing coming out. I'm going to be minimalist about permissions. What's the reaction? What's the feedback?
It depends on how new I am to the company and how new
That's
they are to
fair.
the company and what they're used to being able to do, right?
Yes. And I want to
So-
talk about a little bit of that.
Right. So the answer is always it depends, right?
Yep.
But yeah, so the times I've done this, what I do is I open up like a new SQL script for that application. And as I need permissions, I add them to that script, right? So that I can reproduce it as
Nice.
needed. And I try to get all that stuff worked out during, you know, the pre-production phases so that we can just carry that stuff over.
Yeah.
And usually what they say is something like, yeah, but, you know, give me, you know, just give me DBO and test and QA, and then, you know, we'll work all this other stuff out when it comes to prod. No,
Now, Fred,
A,
we've
no, you
talked about
won't.
this. Yeah.
And B, even in the lower environments, you need to get used to working how you're going to work in prod, right? You need to get used to what you can and can't do. And if you can make a good case for being able to do it, then I'll give you the permissions. But, you know, when the whole point of it being QA is, does everything work the way it's supposed to, right? So how can it work as it's supposed to if you're going to limit their permissions once you get into prod? Right. So yes, we know that DBO can do everything. That's not the point.
Yeah.
So, you know, it usually takes a few rounds. Oh, well, you know, this SP is trying to do this and it's not able to, or I'm trying to, you know, I need to be able to do this and I'm not able to. Okay, fine. I'll snipe those permissions all day long. I don't care. Right. I'll add them to my script. And if anything ever goes awry, I've got the script for that application. I can just hit go and I can reproduce all of them. Right.
Yeah.
Even better if I have Minion, that's even better, right?
Right. Because it's already scripted out.
Because it's already scripted out for you. But yeah, it's hit or miss. If it's a new server, it's always much better.
Yeah.
Because you can always say, you know, the devs will always say, but I've had these permissions for 6 years, right? Not on this server, you haven't.
And I don't know why it should be like that, but it is. It's kind of like moving into a new house and saying, okay, everybody, we're going to keep this place clean. We're going to not put our dishes on the ground. It's a brand new server. We're not going to clutter it up.
We're going to
We'll
learn
see.
how to use the toilets.
And here hopefully we're speaking to the dogs at this point.
Greg looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah.
Can you all hear me this time?
Yes.
Nope.
Yes. He can hear
Sorry.
you.
So what I was going to say was in the whole thought about non-production and getting used to things. One of the things that I've done is extensive use of a lot of different service accounts for app pools and different applications so that we have like a test version, prod, stage, whatever. And I kind of went crazy with it. I broke it up across lines of business so that it's very clear what an app can touch and what it can't. And when they go to ask for something new in a test area, I make sure that they provide all the way to production what they need that way, because I never know when they're going to release.
Nice.
And it's burned me too many times where I provided it in test stage and they didn't tell me, oh yeah, we're going live like in 2 weeks, but we won't tell you till it breaks. So I try to pre-provision everything I can do end to end ahead of time.
Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there are so many good ways to do that. I've thought so many times on what the best way to manage something like that is, and it's really, it goes so much on the environment and the application, and it's impossible to have like a template that you're going to take everywhere, right? It's really hard.
My favorite response to a production failure is, how did it run in test? Because I can prove you never used it in test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Dude, I've sung that song so many times. Well, it works fine and it works fine in test. It's impossible, right? I get that with code deployments all the time. But this is the same script I used on QA and it works just fine. Dude, this is a syntax error. No, it doesn't.
Right.
You're missing a table name. How did you create a table without a table name? That doesn't.
Okay, here's a great question from Paul. How do you deal with the political fallout from coming into an environment where everyone has all the rights?
Right. So this is something I have had a lot of experience with.
Really? You never
And
mentioned it.
and the real answer, the real boots on the ground answer is I don't want to hear about getting backing from the higher ups, because most of the time they're going to fail, right? They're going to fail you when the chips are down, because here's how it's going to play. I'm going to lock you out of SA, and I'm going to, in the interview or in the meetings or whatever, when we decide to do this, the DBA manager, the IT manager, and the CTO are all going to say, we're going to back you because we need tighter security. And then when that happens, the dev is going to notice that he no longer has permissions to do X because he is not an SA anymore. And he's going to go straight to them and he's going to say, you don't understand. I have to have SA or the customers are going to suffer because I can't do this and I can't do that. And I can't do my job without being able to do this. And we're going to start getting customer issues and they're going to start calling support and it's just going to be terrible. And they're going to go, oh my God, customer issues. Forget it. Forget it. Give him SA back. Give him SA back. You've already lost and you will never get it back. Unless you've got a VP that goes, shut up, right? Which almost never happens.
Mhm.
So the way to handle that is to get in front of it. And in that meeting, when y'all decide to cut the permissions, you got to tell them, look, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to cut their permissions and they're going to come screaming to you that the world is on fire. They're going to say that they can't do their jobs effectively without it. They're going to say that customers are going to start complaining and things are going to start falling through the cracks and your reputation is going to go down. You're going to miss SLAs. They're going to come to you with all of this BS.
There may be weeping.
Yeah. And it's flat out wrong. You don't need full admin privileges. That's like saying you need full keys to the house and a full schematic to deliver a damn package, right? No. You need to know where the damn door is, right? Or the mailbox, right? That's all you need to know. And if you tell them up front that they're going to scream that the sky is falling, then it's not a shock and they're going to go, oh yeah, he told me they were going to say this. No, you're fine. And even tell them, you know what? It may take us a couple rounds to get the security right. Right? There may be some things because we're gonna pull the security back and we're gonna do our best guesses of what they need to do. But if they don't tell us everything they do up front, then we can't give them all the security they need, right? So it may take a couple rounds. There are going to be a couple bumps from going from full admin to just what you need to do. But we will get it worked out, and it's not going to be that big of a deal, right? It may slow them down by 10 or 20 minutes. But you know what? So will that lunch burrito. So, so once you tell them that and you tell them what to expect, they're a lot better armed to actually back you up. And that's how you deal with that.
Forewarned is forearmed.
Yes. And if you fail to do this, you will probably lose.
Before closing a path for developers, you should already open a new path for them. No. I would say our job as DBAs is not path makers, because a developer should have a sandbox and a test box to work in.
Yeah, we're talking prod here, right? I mean,
yeah.
And to give, yeah, I agree. I don't think I necessarily have to give them a path to take one away. At the individual developer level, I will usually try to reason with them about not necessarily separation of duties, but so like, here's a really good example. This was from my past, right? I had this developer who had SA for 10 years and he wanted to set up replication on that box. And I was like, dude, why? And he said, oh, well, because, we need to replicate to these sites and things. I said, yes, but your a developer, you're writing code. Do you really want to manage replication too? Do you want to get called in the middle of the night when replication breaks and these customers aren't getting their updates? Because that's what you're doing. So do you want to manage replication or do you want to write code? My job is to set up and manage replication. Why do you want it? Why do you even want to do that? So I try to appeal to their sense of laziness, I guess, their sense of
Purpose. If we want
Yeah,
to put it
sense of-
positively, it's your sense of purpose.
yeah, I suppose. Yeah. But it's really more cynical than that, right?
Oh, I know.
Because not very many people have, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get to write more code. That's not how that works. It's like, dude, do you really want to get up in the middle of the night? And no, okay, then let me take care of this for you. That's what my job is. Do you want me in there writing SPs for you? Probably not.
Not
So
so much.
anyway, carry on. What else we got?
More stuff, huh? I was
Give me
just
somebody.
commenting. Yeah, sure. Well, I was just commenting that we talked about this exact real life scenario in the SQL Server permissions issues, destabilize environments article.
Oh.
I've put the link in chat and I put it out on LinkedIn and stuff.
Okay.
But now I got to figure out where on earth I was.
Oh, and by the way, just for the group, this particular scenario, he wanted to manually replicate the data every hour to 80 different sites using data compare.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And I was like, really? Is this really what you want to do forever? Is every single hour you're going to data compare and send it out to all that? Really? This is what you want to do? You can't even do that in an hour. Aren't you going to sleep?
Greg says many conversations with developers who are asking for the run scripts permission, which does not exist. All right, so we talked about deny. Crossover groups, which is an interesting way, in my opinion, to put that. You said crossover groups are those groups in AD that have the same permissions or similar permissions. And wow, looks like there's something messed up in here. But let's say one group needs permission A and permission B. The other group needs permission B and permission C, or just permission B. So this group gets added to this group. That's a problem.
Yeah, or even moreover, yes, this group gets added to this group, but also it could just be somebody, somebody's in the waiting room.
Oh, thanks.
Lobby. But somebody can just have membership into these two different groups.
Sure.
Right. So this causes a real problem when you're talking about somebody that like has access to the marketing group where they have access to run this SP and then access to and then membership in the HR group where they're denied access on that SP. Right. So that's the kind of crossover kerfuffle I'm talking about. But yeah, you can get unintended privilege escalation that way as well. But definitely, it's the permissions canceling each other out that can also be a big problem, because what do you do? Right. And I've had this problem so many times I can't even count. Somebody says, well, yesterday I could run this SP and today I can't. Jesus Christ. Okay, let's see. Right. So you go and you try to find what the problem is. It turns out, yeah, they were put in this new group yesterday that now has deny.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, because, select across all, but grant across all, but deny equals deny. Right. I remember when that came in, it didn't used to be. So deny is deny. So if you have deny anywhere, you have deny everywhere. And so now you've got the problem of, okay, so you need to be able to run this SP, but you also need to be able to do these other things that are in this group that this group doesn't offer. And I can't give this group access to this SP so that you can do it. So now what do I do with you? Right? That's a crossover group. What do I do with you now? Because you've got these crossover permissions that I can't take away from this group and I can't give to this group. So now you're in this group and I've got to take you out of this group so that I can give you the permissions that you need that are denied over there. Oh God.
This falls under the heading of in real life, the crossovers get more and more complicated. But the initial thing that we did talk about was the escalation of privileges. I mean, it's complicated in both cases, but I mean, as a DBA who is strictly concerned about security in the sense of I don't want people to have it, for me, it's the escalation of privileges that is the bigger deal. I recognize that people cry a lot more about de-escalation or denial of permissions, but it's both. We're trying to keep things safe, and secondarily, maybe let people do their jobs, whatever, who cares. So you said the advice you gave was to use smaller roles with smaller permission definitions, for example, customer execute and shipping update. It's like very, very specifically granting out those permissions by groups.
So there are two ways you could do this, and they're 6 1/2 really. One of them is just easier to manage, I think. So it's kind of like giving individual permissions, right? So I can say, okay, so nobody's going to use groups at all. We're just gonna give individual permissions to everybody for what they need, and that's it, right? But that's a little bit harder to manage, right? Because now you've got these individual permissions for 300 people in the database, and yeah, you've got nice tight security, but now you're in a management nightmare, right? So in my estimation, giving some groups, and I don't care how many groups I have, right? If I have, 167 database roles, I don't care, right? Name them well so you know what they do.
Yeah.
And give small levels of permissions to them so that these individual people or these individual groups can go into these groups, and there's a lot less crossover, right? So one of them has permissions to create tables. Boom, that's it, right? Maybe only create tables in one schema. Another one has permissions to run SPs in this one schema, or maybe only this one SP in this one schema, right? So instead of having all of these permissions like the HR in the previous one, right? So HR has all these permissions and deny on this one SP, put that deny in that SP in its own database role, so that everybody in HR is part of HR and also this group. And this guy is in HR, but he's not in this group, so he can still access that SP because the only permission for that for denying that SP is in that group. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And yeah, I could do this at the user level or at the object level. And so I did say it's just 6 1/2, right? But it's a lot easier to check for group membership than it is object permissions.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
And if you need to make changes, it's a lot easier to make those changes at the database role level than it is at the object level, because you could have groups of objects, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just single objects. But if you've got like an outlier permission, like the deny on that SP or a simple deny on a column, then that's much better handled with a more singleton group, right? With a narrower group that other groups get access to also. But if I happen to need those crossover permissions, just don't put me in this group, and it's a lot easier to manage.
The last thing that we've got, because we're running up on time. Oh,
I want to hear what anybody else thinks about that. If they've managed that the same way, they've managed that issue the same way. We can go on, but
it's okay. We'll wait a sec.
They'll come in or not. Bridget's done with me.
Well, I mean, look at you.
Yeah, you'd rather not.
All right. So the last thing that I wanted to go over, secondary systems. which when I first read it, I was kind of surprised. I was like, huh, okay, where's he going with this? So secondary systems, you're talking about different environments. You're talking about having dev and test. Yeah.
Yeah. It could be, it could be different environments, or it could just be something as simple as, like a log shipping, right? Just something, and it depends on what you need it for, right?
Right.
But it just something to keep people off of prod more often than not. If you need to run something that shows what sales were like yesterday or whatnot, there's no reason why that has to be done on live data because it was yesterday.
Sure.
Right? If somebody needs to see the schema for an SP, sure, there's no reason that needs to be done on prod. They don't need those permissions on prod, right? So
Yeah.
you can have, and there are applications out there that do this, not as well as Minion, but still, that, will go through and give you your schema objects and put them in, help files or text files or whatever, right? And so there are lots of solutions for this problem out there, but giving people access to data columns, I'll say the global data dictionary, even though that's fallen out of favor and nobody knows how to use that anymore. But those types of things will keep people from having to get on prod and be given extended permissions when they don't need it. So any excuse, and I follow this myself, right? Any excuse to keep me off of prod is a damn good, right? Any prod that relies on me is doomed to fail. So, I mean, yeah, I've had SA on every system I've worked on for decades, but I still choose to not go to prod if I don't have to. If you've got a lower level environment that you update every week or something, that's golden. Give people permissions to that, right? But if you don't, then fine. Script out your database every so often, or give them read access to your GitHub where they can get those objects, right? Just something to keep them off of prod when they don't need to be.
Interesting. Yeah, well, and when you wrote about it, I took it as, secondary servers of any kind, but I really like the idea of just reports as a secondary system to keep people off of production and that kind of thing. Yeah, Cool. Nice grouping.
Sometimes you do actually need to give devs access to troubleshoot live customer data issues.
Yes.
Sure. But if that happens often enough, I'm going to say AG, log shipping, replication, mirroring. Yeah, I know mirroring's a curse word these days, but any of those solutions, right? If it happens often enough, keep them off of prod and give them another way to do it. You can still look at the live data.
Yeah. So we've got a question on how to handle database role grants to objects that have been dropped and recreated by releases. He says, I like using roles, but occasionally had to rebuild the grants when related stage tables have been dropped and recreated.
Right. So the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
This comes back. Okay. This comes back to what? What did we already talk about?
Denying things.
Schemas.
Right. That.
If you keep your objects in separate schemas like you're supposed to, that group can have the appropriate privileges to that schema. And as those objects fall and stand back up again, you will already have those.
Nice.
So that's the answer to that. Schema, schema, schema. If you've got staging objects, have a staging schema.
Absolutely. Do we need database firewall solution? That's kind of a broad question.
In what sense?
Yeah, you're going to have to get back with us on that.
My initial answer is not necessarily yes, but hell yes. But it depends on what you mean.
Yeah.
And feel free to unmic and just talk to us about it.
Yeah, this is kind of the Q&A section. We've covered most of what we wanted to. I did want to ask you in the meanwhile, Sean, did you get back to that capturing errors point you wanted to on dynamic SQL?
Oh, I don't think so. So yeah, for DSQL, when it comes, one of the big problems or one of the big ways that injection works is having some knowledge about the database. And so what they'll do a lot of times is they'll put in something like, let's say that they find a web field that they're able to. Michael, did you have something? I'll take that as a no. So let's say that they find a web field that they're able to inject, right? So one of the things they'll do is say select name from DBO.customer, right? One of the things they'll do is, when they get the error back, a lot of times they just send the error through, right? DBO.customer does not exist. So we don't have DBO.customer. Okay, so they'll keep doing that again and again and again until they start figuring out what the objects and the column names are, right? So if you handle your errors and send back generic errors, something like invalid query, right? Or, something like wrong format, or, just whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Just something that doesn't give away that object either exists or doesn't exist, right? Because you could say something like, and even better, they may get lucky, right? You may say select name from DBO.customers, and they'll say, and they'll send the error message back that column name name cannot be found for DBO.customers. And you're like, the table exists. So now I know that the table exists, and so they can start hammering away at the column names. So yeah, don't return the error messages, handle the error message and return something back, but something that's not going to give away your object names or confirm or deny whether or not the objects actually exist.
Yeah.
So that's what I had to, and that's really kind of, yeah, I mean, you kind of want to do that with regular SQL as well, but it's much more important for DSQL, right? Anyway, I'm done with that. If anybody had anything else to say on whatever we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Firewalls.
No follow-up on that, but Paul asks, in your DevOps, you can, or says in your DevOps, you can also split the scripts between DML, DDL, and DCL security scripts.
Absolutely.
DCL, at the moment, the C isn't coming to mind. Manipulation, definition, command. What's the C stand for?
Whatever you want.
Chocolate.
Control language.
There we go. I was close.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to hit the unmute. It kept not working there. It's a data. Let's see. Data control language includes commands like grant, revoke, and giving rights and permissions. So you can split. In my DevOps, I've learned that I split my DDL and DML, so it makes it easy to roll back. Same thing, you can throw in DCL scripts in there, and maybe, of course, that would be a mature environment. It's not going to work in a baby environment. So,
yeah, I'm not a fan of mixing my script types either.
Fair enough.
To
More
me, it's easier to create all of the objects, then populate all the objects, then secure all the objects.
Right. So
Or
I'm going to
vice
say,
versa.
I'm going to say two things, and then I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll hang out and we'll chat a little bit for whoever wants to.
You will. I got to go.
Oh, well, fine enough. You got 5 minutes. So one, I've put a couple of links into chat. So one is, please follow us on LinkedIn. It is kind of a big deal. That's the company, that's Minionware, but you can follow me and Sean individually if you'd like as well. That helps us out a lot. And Greg has put what looks like a password into chat. And two, subscribe to our YouTube. That's a phrase that has become cliche and annoying, but it doesn't matter because that's where we put videos like this and a lot of Sean's really cool training videos. You've been training several people for several months now and recording those and putting those up. So some really, really good stuff out there.
Yeah, guys, if you're not aware, I've got a whole series on writing custom classes in PowerShell. Absolutely fabulous.
Yeah, you just search Midnight DBA on YouTube. That's us. Subscribe, hit the little alert button so you get notified, stuff like that. And that's what I want you to do for us. Yeah, you can do that real quick before you forget. I'm going to end.
And don't forget
the
Minion.
and Minion.
That's all
Going to
I'm
end the
gonna say.
recording and we're going to hang out. So I've got to stop the recording.